Ladies and gentlemen, I checked out the new Bong Joon-ho Mickey 17. I'm here to give you a quick review. You know, people have asked me, am I going to be confused if I haven't seen Mickey's 1 through 16? And after seeing the movie, the answer might be yes. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Garage. Sorry for my dad joke during the opening there. I'm sure I'm not the only person who's made that joke. Of course, there were not 16 previous installments in this franchise, but we are getting a new Bong Joon-ho film called Mickey 17. This will be a spoiler-free review. Anything that I reveal in this review and talking about the movie, you would have seen in the trailer or marketing materials, which kind of bums me out, honestly, because some of the things that happen in this movie I think would have been better received had they been a surprise during my viewing. When I did make that joke, though, what I was kind of alluding to is going to be the general theme of this review, is that Mickey 17 is a bit scattered and a bit confusing and kind of convoluted at times. Coming off one of the greatest films, in my opinion, of all time, frankly, in Parasite.
I'm deadly serious.
Which was, of course, not only a big box office success, and like I said, a masterful work, it was also a huge awards player and ended up winning almost a surprise Best Picture win on Oscars night. So basically what happened here, Warner Brothers, for all intensive purposes, gave Bong a free blank check to make whatever he wanted following up Parasite. Warner Brothers said, here you go, I hope you can do another one. Well, what we get with Mickey 17 is a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but it's definitely not Parasite. Unlikely hero Mickey Barnes finds himself in the extraordinary circumstance of working for an employer who demands the ultimate commitment to the job to die for a living. So Mickey 17 is a sci-fi kind of comedy drama, I guess, featuring Robert Pattinson as the titular Mickey. Mickey has some troubles on Earth. This is a futuristic story. So him and his buddy, portrayed by Steven Yeun, brilliantly in the film, by the way, decide to leave Earth, and they go on this mission through space, which is led by a failed politician played by Mark Ruffalo. And I'm going to talk about his performance in depth here in just a minute because we'll just hold that thought. So Steven Yeun and Robert Pattinson's character Mickey go in this spacecraft and they go out to space. Basically, they're commandeering a brand new undiscovered planet, and Mark Ruffalo and all of his followers are basically going to procreate there and kind of create their own human race that is pure and separate from all the impurities that have now taken over our normal Earth. Now, Mickey in the film, Robert Pattinson, is a character that decided to sign up as an expendable. He's basically tired of his life. He doesn't really have anything to live for, or at least he doesn't think he does. And his self-worth is extremely low. So he says, you know what? I don't want to wait in all these lines to apply for all these other jobs for engineers and construction and whatever else. So I'll just be an expendable because there's no line for that job. Well, it turns out being an expendable is exactly what it sounds like. He is a character who is basically used for testing, and they send him out into various dangerous missions or run dangerous life-threatening tests on him for viruses and things like that. And he basically dies, or if he dies, they reprint him. It's a human printer that essentially creates a clone of Mickey, and then they just send him out to the next mission. And if he dies, and here comes the next Mickey. So the film is actually based on a book called Mickey 7, and I guess Bong Joon-ho was like, I want to see Pattinson die a lot more times than that, so let's make it Mickey 17. So the movie really kind of gets to its narrative and gets to the heft of the story once the 17th version of Mickey is printed out after he died 16 times prior on these missions on their new planet. He ends up encountering these creatures. Like I said, they are seen in the trailer, so it's not a surprise necessarily. But they are the only living things on this planet. They make up the only race that at least that we know about on this new planet. Mickey 17 encounters them, Steven Yeun witnesses it, and basically everybody thinks the animals and the creatures killed Mickey, so they reprint him again, and of course this time it's Mickey 18. Well, Mickey 17 gets back to base, not dead, he was not killed by the creatures, and he encounters his future self, I guess, or another version of himself. So Mickey 17 and Mickey 18, for the rest of the movie, basically the second half of the film, there's two Robert Pattinsons, there's two Mickeys, and they are our lead characters in that last half of the film. So this sets up a lot of kind of awkwardness between the two of them, but what it really does more for me, and I'm speaking from a craft perspective versus like a story perspective, is it gives us two blow you away Unbelievable, phenomenal performances from Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson is playing two completely different personalities as himself when he's 17 and 18 in this movie, which is for, like I said, basically the whole second half of the film. But every time he gets reprinted, a little something gets lost in his personality, or in some cases, other parts of his personality may be enhanced. So Mickey 18 is a much more cynical, kind of fearless character. So he is very much at odds with the 17 version of himself and vice versa. But Robert Pattinson's performance here, especially once there's two of him in the frame, is unbelievable. I mean, it's literally the most remarkable thing I think I've seen from him in his career. And I love him as an actor. Movies like High Life, The Lighthouse, taking on his turn as the emo Batman in Matt Reeves' film. The dude is a great actor, but I gotta tell you, in Mickey 17, he even shocked me. I was like, damn, he really, really is a good actor. Now, he makes the character quirky, and he makes it himself. He uses almost this like Looney Tunes, cartoonish voiceover. That's how we're introduced to him in the beginning of the film with the narration piece. And that's the 17 character as well. So he kind of carries that kind of foolish, almost like absent-minded, cartoonish is the best thing that comes to mind for me when I'm describing his kind of voice work in this film and his accent, which he's been known to do those really weird fucking accents before. And we have another one here. Really, we have two of them once 18 is introduced. And I just love his commitment to this character and just buying into kind of the silliness and just the unbelievability of everything that's happening in Bong Joon-ho's world here. So along with Robert Pattinson, we also got a brilliant performance from Naomi Ackie in the film. She plays his love interest, Nasha. And I also mentioned Steven Yeun, who I think is really good in the film too, as kind of a wayward, fair-weather friend to Mickey, who basically uses Mickey throughout the entire movie to better himself. A very selfish character, but it was played brilliantly by Steven Yeun. Now let's talk about real quick, I'm going to devote a minute or two to Mark Ruffalo specifically, but really him and Toni Collette, which are a two-hander in this movie, as they play a husband and a wife duo that are essentially leading this mission. So Kenneth Marshall, played by Mark Ruffalo, is a character to me, as I was watching the film, and I don't know if this is going to be divisive or a hot take, but to me he was much like a Trump-esque character. I'm talking about Donald Trump, of course, the current U.S. president. He had a lot of followers that were like in love with him and wanted to go on the ship, kind of blindly follow him to this unknown planet in the middle of outer space. I mean, even the followers that we see before they leave Earth had like red ball caps on that were very reminiscent of like Make America Great Again hats. It may have been a little heavy-handed, but to me, I saw a little bit of Trump's kind of personality in the public eye in Ruffalo's performance. But whether that was intentional or not, or whether Ruffalo borrowed from Trump's kind of personality to make this character, I'm not sure. But what we get in the character, regardless if it's meant to be mirrored against any real people, we get a very narcissistic and selfish leader who really just wants to be seen as the greatest. And he wants to be seen as somebody who created a pure human race. They refer to that several times. Basically, an all-white, for the most part, and a superior, I think they use that term as well, race. So you can see a lot of political messaging in the film from Bong Joon-ho here when it comes to like nationalism, capitalism, the class system for sure. And even when you have somebody as prominent in the film as Pattinson is, Mickey is an expendable. They're literally killing him every day to better themselves and to make themselves look better. I've seen Ruffalo's performance kind of bashed by a lot of critics and a lot of online periodicals and YouTube channels. I loved it. I'm just going to tell you guys right now, I thought Ruffalo was an absolute standout in this film, along with Robert Pattinson, of course. He is a batshit, silly, crazy buffoon in this movie, but I love that he bought into that. He went all in with that wild performance. It was actually reminiscent of, for me, of his turn in Poor Things, which was also way out there from what we were used to by Ruffalo at the time. We were used to him in the MCU stuff or even in romantic comedies. He kind of returned to his crazy, out-of-the-box performing in this movie that I saw from him in Poor Things, and I loved it. I don't really understand the negative connotation around it, because that's obviously what he was going for, and he went way over the top and just dug into this role perfectly. And he was actually one of my favorite things and one of the funniest things from a comedic perspective about the movie too, because his character was just so ridiculous and his performance matched that. I also really like Toni Collette as his wife in the film, although her tone in the movie was a little more serious, not as overly ridiculous and comedic as Ruffalo's was, but I thought the two of them together, obviously two veteran powerhouse actors, went really well together in the movie. You know, Mickey 17 is a movie that does lend heavily to the performances, and I've already talked about most of those, and honestly, I have a positive take on all of the performances in the movie, but when it comes to the narrative of the film and just kind of the pacing of the film, that's where it lost me a little bit, especially when we get into the last act and the back half of the movie. The kind of political messaging that I already talked about that's really driven home is a bit heavy-handed. There's even a monologue that Naomi Ackie's character has in the last 20 minutes of the film that basically lays everything out as to what this kind of hidden message was, but now it's not hidden because she's literally saying everything that Ruffalo and all of these kind of dictator wannabes are doing in the movie. I love her performance, and I actually thought the kind of monologue that she gives is really powerful, but again, it just lays it all out there for you, and then it's what's the rest of the movie? What's the point, really? So if we get that message, and there's no way you can't get it, it's not subtle at all, especially after Ackie does her thing. What are we doing? I mean, it doesn't really go anywhere else. There's this storyline with the creatures that inhabit the planet, us kind of invading that planet and becoming the immigrants, if you will, in this situation, and kind of trying to take over. So there's some great action sequences, some awesome visual effects, but it just didn't really show me anything that I got from a movie like Parasite that also had all these hidden kind of under the surface messages when you're talking about classism or capitalism or wealth. You know, those messages are in that movie, but they're much more subtle and they're much more open to interpretation as to where you think they fall in terms of the importance. If you think of vibes, it is very similar to Okja. It's probably a mix between Okja and Snowpiercer. Mickey 17 is kind of in the middle of those two films. It borrows a lot of the same elements from his previous works in that regard. But there's very little Parasite in this movie at all. I don't see a lot of influence from that movie in this movie, with the exception of those messages that are kind of in the narrative that I spoke about. We've had some great films this year. I'm going to be doing a review shortly for a film called Novocaine that I really dug. Companion was great. But these are all genre films or action films. They're not awards players. So I thought maybe Mickey 17 would be the first big awards player this year, but frankly, I just don't think so. I'm going to start doing this on my review since I've rebranded to the Awards Garage. I'm going to start telling you if I think the movies that I'm reviewing have any awards potential, potentially Oscars. And when it comes to Mickey 17, I will say there is very little chance that it will be nominated for frankly anything, even though Robert Pattinson puts in a performance here that is definitely worthy of a nomination. It's just in a film that's probably not going to get anything else, and it is obviously coming out so early in the year that I don't see that happening. The only thing that I would give a possible Oscar nomination to would be visual effects, so I will put that on my radar here. And I'm going to give Mickey 17 out of 10. Remember, I don't do 0.5s. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's getting an extra 0.5 because this probably would be more in the 6.5 range. But it's getting an extra 0.5 from just the absurdity and courageous filmmaking of Joon-ho. Warner Brothers said, it's $140 million or something. They said, here it is. Let's make the next Parasite. And he made this batshit crazy science fiction nut house that, is definitely probably not going to make its money back at the box office. Yeah, you should go see it, though. It is definitely quirky, and if you like sci-fi, if you like that traveling out into space and battling with who you are and where you fit in the universe, which Pattinson's character is doing throughout this entire film, then you'll probably dig it. And if you like Bong Joon-ho, this is probably in the middle of his filmography for me. But I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. What did you think of Mickey 17, or are you planning on seeing it? Let me know down below in the comments. This week I will also be dropping a quick spoiler-free review for you for the new Novocaine action comedy romance, kinda, starring Jack Quaid and Amber Midthunder, so stick around for that. And I've got a couple more kind of Oscar-related countdown videos on the horizon as well. Let me know what you thought of Mickey 17 down in the comments, and I will see you guys out here next time in the garage.